Gonna do a little meet recap here for one of my athletes, Sam. She just competed on January 6th, so we kind of got a calendar here. Formatting's a little messed up, but she'll get a new spreadsheet for this upcoming year, and then it'll look a lot cleaner. So this is where calendar looks like. You use this to kind of plan out block timing and meet preps and all that kind of stuff. So Sam is more of a seasonal athlete. She only powerlifts during like a 12 to 16 week meet prep. And then after that, she does a lot of CrossFit, a lot of conditioning stuff, and then various other sports that she's interested in. It makes it kind of tricky on my end because I don't have a full off season to prepare for things, to like work on weaknesses or things like that. It's kind of just like throw in everything all at once and hope for the best. Not literally, but it's sometimes it ends up being like that. I have to stray from my normal style of programming, which is good. It makes me be more creative, makes me think about things in a different way, forces me to grow as a coach. So in ways, it's happy to have athletes like her that don't just fit the mold per se. So generally, I've programmed in 3 to 6 week training blocks. Most people are at 4 or 5. And Sam has never really had a consistent block length. It's kind of just like, if we have 12 weeks, okay, we do two 5-week blocks with the deload in between or something like that. We just kind of make it work with whatever time frame we have. So with this one, we ended up having 14 weeks from October 7th all the way through January 6th. And we ended up doing 2 7-week blocks. So we did 6 weeks and then a deload in week 7, and then 6 weeks compete in week 7 on the second block. It's actually ended up working fairly well. Most of the time, Sam ends up doing a 5 to 7 week training block, and it seems like it's worked pretty well, actually. We just kind of take our time. Don't go too heavy, too fast. Make all the secondary work is fairly easy, but she does like to full send a little bit on the heavy days, and so she might be hitting like back-to-back RP 8 to 9s the entire block, but it ends up working pretty well for her. And for small women in general, because she is a 125-pound competitor, they can usually handle a lot more volume and a lot more intensity at higher volumes. So that's pretty interesting to note there. This is what our training block looks like. Let's go back at the top. So this is the first week of the second training block. We're not really going to go through all of them. So the second training block, there's just a lot of volume in the secondary. A lot of volume in these secondary days. So Sam has a heavy SBD day on Saturday. She's squatting 3 days a week. She's benching 4. She's deadlifting twice. And we did line up Saturday, the SBD day, because she competes on a Saturday, so she could just like coast into the meet. We know exactly what to expect every Saturday. Because this is a longer training block, I didn't want to start off with doing singles for 6 weeks straight. So at least on squat, bench, and deadlift, she tends to do better with the practice on those. But squat tends to do better with a little bit of a higher workload for her. So I wanted to keep the heavier double in there just in the beginning. So the back offs were just some heavy triples and some 4s on deadlifts. And that stayed pretty constant. The tertiary bench day was just some 3-count pause, really light on Thursday before Saturday. And then before that, we have some just volume, close grip Larson. This exercise specifically is really good for Sam because Sam does not have a big arch. She does not have wide grip. She's not a very technical bench presser. And so it relies a lot on just brute strength. And so close grip, feet up bench is probably one of the best ways to just build raw pressing strength when it comes to the bench press. And then her middle squat day is a very easy pause squat day. Her secondary deadlift day was just some volume, sets of 5 that progressively got heavier. And then her volume squat day was 6s, and her volume bench day was 4s. These all started off fairly light and got heavier as the block went on. Yeah, not much changed here. We can look through everything, and everything kind of stayed pretty much exactly the same. You see RP just kind of went up as the weeks went on. So you get to week 3, and we still have just a double on the squat. Everything else stayed the same. And we get to week 4, and this is where the double on squat turned into a single. And then everything else is still singles. RP is going up a little bit on all of the rest of the stuff, like the pause bench, the Larson, the pause squat. Everything is staying fairly light. Nothing is prescribed above RP7. And then the percentage-based volume stuff is also meant to be below RP7. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Week 5 is also, we started lowering reps just a little bit. So instead of 6s on squat, we went down to 5s. Bench was the same. Deadlift went down to 4s instead of 5s. And everything else stayed exact. Bench went down to 6s instead of 7s. And then the rest was the same. Increasing the RP again. All the way building up to last heavy week in week 6, hitting a single at 9, hitting 120. So 120 on squat actually is the best she's hit in comp, but it didn't count. So 120 is technically a meet PR for her. And she also hit 60 kilos on bench. So this is one of the best squat and bench blocks, bench specifically, that she's ever had. She's always struggled with bench. And luckily I was down in California for a couple of days and managed to work a little bit with her on technique. But she's never hit a plate before. She's never benched 45 on each side, and she managed to hit it 3 times during prep. The first time at a commercial gym, touch and go. The second time at a commercial gym with a slight pause. The third time on kilos in a powerlifting gym with someone else giving her a press command, I think. And they all moved really well, and she ended up hitting 60 kilos during the meet, way faster than all of those times in training. So it was really, really good to see. So yeah, this is what her training block looked like. See, everything is basically the same. I want to keep workload as high as possible going into the competition, because I don't want the athlete to detrain, especially someone who's conditioned to such a high level of work. It's just such a high workload. So going into the meet, there's no real taper until the very last week. And even the very last week, as you see here, it's not nothing. It's pretty easy, right? We go from 4 sets of 5 at 85% on squat to 3 sets of 4 at 70%, but she's still going to be training 3 days a week. 4 days a week, my bad. Yeah, so she still had a volume squat day, still had a volume bench day, relatively heavy at 85% still. Still had triples on deadlift at 75%. Still did pause squats, 1 double at 5 instead of 2 doubles at 7. Volume close grip Larson, only 2 sets of 5, and 2 singles for the last 3 count pause day. So she still had a normal training week. Everything is exactly the same variations, the same general like sets and rep templates. Because for the last 6 weeks, that's what she was doing, and her performance on day 5 continued to increase. So going into the meet, of course, we want to drop fatigue, but we also want to keep performance as high as possible. And so if everything we're doing is leading towards a good performance, and we've seen that repeatedly throughout the entire training block for the last 13 weeks straight, why change things? I think that's a big thing people get wrong when it comes to peaking for a meet. People misunderstand peaking entirely, but if something's working, don't change it. And especially going into a competition, even the very last week, I think people are kind of over obsessed with feeling fresh and ready to go and not fatigued, that they end up detraining a little too much, or they sacrifice the ability to showcase their top end strength just to feel a little bit fresher. And so that's kind of like a spectrum there. Every athlete's going to be a little bit different. And some people are going to do better feeling more fresh. Some people are going to be better feeling a little bit more fatigue, but feeling more prepared or ready to lift. Some people will detrain really fast, or they will kind of lose the ability to control a heavy weight on their back in just a week. Some people can maintain that for like 3 weeks without hitting it. And it's really going to depend on the athlete. There are generalities here. And usually it's the lighter men and the lighter women that need to have a higher workload going into a competition. And myself, I'm the same way. So yeah, there was no real taper until the final training week, but it was still just enough to keep everything there and keep the stimulus exactly the same, just lower it a little bit so that we can keep her fitness levels in relation to powerlifting really high, while dropping a little bit of fatigue, but not so much, not doing so little that she starts detraining. So yeah, that's what the whole prep looks like. And then we'll get into the actual attempts. Prior to this, Sam's best squat in competition, I believe, was 117.5. We were planning this meet to aim for at least 120. And then if it was there, we were going to take a shot at the qualifying total for nationals. So our opener was 112. That moved really, really well. We decided to jump straight to 120 on our second attempt. This was the heaviest lift that she hit in competition, in training. And she's never gotten this in competition. So we got that moving really well. VPR on her second attempt, which is really cool to see. And then knowing that she dies out really quickly, she opted to only do a small 2.5 kilo jump. And it just wasn't quite there on the day. So this is something that kind of racking my brain about programming wise, what we can do to essentially get the grind better. And there are a lot of options, just kind of going back and forth on like what might be the best one and how to apply that within like just the 12-week meet prep with no real off-season work. Bench, like I said, was fantastic. It's probably the best prep she's ever had for bench, some of the best bench training ever. So we decided to aim for 60, not get too greedy, and it ended up going really, really well. After this second attempt, 57, I was honestly a little skeptical if 60 would be there, but she told me that she actually almost timed out on her last attempt here, because the order got changed and she didn't quite notice it, and so there was just so much adrenaline. She was just running out there and almost rushing through her setup. She just didn't have time to think about it, didn't have time to worry, and I think that helped a lot because that 60 kilos flew on her third. Deadlift, we kind of changed the plan here, like mid-competition. Knowing that she missed 122.5, we knew that she needed a 180 deadlift to hit the qualifying total. And to be honest, I thought that was going to be a stretch, but something I try to adhere by when it comes to competition is like, I'm not going to say anything that might diminish my athlete's confidence in themselves, even especially if I'm not there, right? Because we're communicating through text and voice message this whole time, and there is someone else who's a friend of mine that was helping her, and I am not going to try to diminish her. I don't want to diminish her confidence in any way whatsoever. I want her to stay confident in her abilities. And so even though I was pretty sure, like 99% sure that 180 was not going to be there to hit the qualifying total, that I don't want to tell her that we can't do that or you can't do that. You're not capable of that. And she likes a full send anyway, right? Some athletes go in to have fun, to just chip a PR, to kind of hit all her lifts, and some athletes don't want to miss. She's not one of those athletes. She loves a full send. She wants to max out. She wants to leave it all out there. So knowing that too, I was okay with her kind of going above the plan to try to reach for that qualifying total. And if she did that, she'd also have a big total PR, a big deadlift PR too. So initially we were planning like 155, 165, 175 deadlift attempts. Kind of changed that plan to try for 160, 170, 180. Last competition, she missed 175, so it really didn't seem like a massive stretch to potentially take a stab at 180. It would just depend on how things are going on the day, and clearly this is not the day. She ended up missing 170 twice on the second and third attempt, and yeah, it just wasn't quite there. So last prep was definitely a lot better for deadlifts, so before I write her next prep, I'm going to go back and look at the last prep a lot, see what the differences were, try to see why that one might have been better on deadlifts, and think about what more we can do to bring up deadlift strength. She's always really strong off the floor, and even though I'm generally not a fan of block pulls, she's been asking for block pulls. I think we might give that a shot as well. I'm also kind of curious about maybe some banded deadlift, or maybe some deficit deadlift. Honestly, banded deadlift on squat might be the move too. But she trains in her garage, so it's another limitation there. We can't get too crazy with certain variations. So yeah, stay tuned for May. I guess all until May be her next competition, and we'll once again be reaching for that qualifying total so that she can compete at nationals once again.